Welcome to the Eclectic Gamers Podcast. Today is Sunday, May 7th. It's episode 34. I'm Tony.
And I'm Dennis.
And we're joined by a very special guest this time around. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, good morning. I'm Bowen Kerins from Salem, Massachusetts, and I play pinball.
And for those of you who probably heard of Bowen, he is seen as a pretty major pinball ambassador. I think for most of our listeners, they may know you for a lot of the tutorial videos that you do for the Professional Amateur Pinball Association. And in the show notes, for those that are interested, I have a link to those videos. I have a link to your Patreon for those that want to financially help support those efforts for you to continue to do those videos. And also a link to the Tilt Through podcast, of which you are one of the co-hosts. So thank you so much for being on our show. We cover a mix of gaming, but we know most of our listeners are pinball oriented. So we're going to hit real heavy into pinball for this episode. I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to plug or promote or talk about at the start here before we get going into the news, but the floor is yours.
Not really. It's an honor to have the support from the Patreon backers. We have plenty of support at this point to continue making these videos. I'll be traveling to Pittsburgh later this month to film. I'll be traveling to San Francisco to film in June. And it's been amazing. The fact that we're able to continue making these is outstanding. I used to just basically work in Pittsburgh every couple months, and that's how those videos were being made. And I just assumed that would be the end of it once I was no longer able to travel there as often.
Well, I'm really glad that they have not stopped, because they are ever so helpful to me to, at least when I lose, it's only my skill. It's not that I don't know what to do on the game anymore. So they definitely come in handy, and you have an interesting sense of humor, so they're entertaining to watch as well.
Interesting, not a good sense of humor. Interesting sense of humor.
That's the term that's used to describe me a lot. Or dry. I'm very dry on my
extremely
approach. So
dry.
I'm somewhat dry. I'm going to revise that to somewhat dry. Tony, do you have anything you want to summarize though before we get rolling into the pinball topic?
No, it's just been a pretty standard crazy week for me, so I haven't had time to do much of anything other than I did start playing Nier Automata, and I'll talk about that at a later time, because this game has a deep story, like a seriously deep story, and I'm in the middle of it. I haven't decided if it's as good as it's looking like it's going to be, or if it's just a terrible, terrible tease.
Yeah, I have a couple video game things that will carry over to the next episode to talk about. I do want to mention a couple things that kind of relate to the podcast, one more directly than the other. First is that one of our listeners, Jake, wrote into us on Facebook. He heard our last episode and heard me mention my interest in trying to find a Silver Slugger, the Gottlieb early System 3, one of their street level games. Turns out he has one, so he sent a picture and he said that he's had at any given time over 50 games in his collection, and it's actually his favorite from a gameplay standpoint. So I guess I'm not totally insane for being interested in a Gottlieb. He also mentioned Title Fight that was somewhat near us. Unfortunately, Title Fight isn't one that's interesting to me because the layout, I think, it's too easy to exploit the loop in the upper right. But I am watching for a Hoops or a Silver Slugger. So thank you, Jake, for writing in and confirming that my analysis is at least somewhat on target.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Hoops. It's a much better game than it has any right to be, honestly. And Title Fight is a fun layout. I think that I often look at games from a point scoring and competition perspective, and Title Fight turns out not to be nearly as good from that perspective, although it is quite good from a playfield layout and interesting shot perspective.
Don, formerly of the Pinball Podcast, currently of the Link Cable Podcast, agrees with you about Hoops. He pushed me most on Hoops, saying that he thinks that that's the strongest of the 6 street level games that he's familiar with. So, and Hoops and Silver Slugger, I think, are the only 2 of the street level that had John Trudeau involved on design. But I think Hoops, he left while it was in production. I think Norris took it over. So interesting little history there. But Okay, good. I'm okay. I'm keeping my eyes out, but I don't see him crop up much. The other item is Nick Dangerous. He was actually our very first interview we ever did last year, right after the 2016 Texas Pinball Festival. He has been out doing a tour of the continental UX, fixing EM machines. He's got a thread on Pinside that's running as a sort of travel blog. He's putting in lots of fun photos. He's using a lot of humor and doing these little write-ups of these visits where he's going and he's restoring these EM or teaching people how to fix their EM machines so that they're functional and can be played. And unlike a lot of threads on Pinside, this one's actually very, very positive. There's no negativity with it. So I have a link in the show notes directly to the thread. So anyone who wants to follow along with Nick's adventures can do so. So let's move to the productivity portion of the podcast and let's go on into pinball. And we got a few news things to hit on, and we're going to have some interesting discussions with Bowen, but I want to go ahead and tear through the news first, since some people shockingly might only listen to us, which would probably be a huge mistake. But if we're your only source for pinball news, let me go ahead and do what I can here really, really quickly. Skit-B, the company, quote unquote, that was behind the Predator pinball fiasco. There have been 2 new legal hearings that have happened. One has involved Kevin Kulix, who was the owner-operator of Skit-B, his wife, and one involves Virtua Pin, which was contracted to make the cabinets for the job. I have links to both audios of those hearings in the show notes. The one with the wife is mostly about the house and the photo equipment that she possesses and interest in exploring whether or not the Predator money went towards acquiring those things. I know that the trustee's office very much thinks they have evidence of a paper trail that the house was bought with that money. And it seems that based off the hearing that I have listened to, that the wife isn't contesting that that's how it looks. And it seems more that she's trying to find a way to come up with money to keep the house rather than have to give the house over to the estate. The Virtua Pin hearing was more about the default judgment. They had not shown up to court, so they received a default judgment that they had to turn over a CNC machine, which is used to cut cabinets. This was a hearing where Virtua Pin asked for that default judgment to be set aside, and their lawyer attempted to excuse why he was derelict in actually getting to court on time. The judge did agree to set aside the default judgment. The trustee gets a small payment of money because their time was wasted, basically having to deal with this restoration of the ability to defend themselves. But the case will get to move forward, so Virtua Pin will be allowed to present its evidence as to why the CNC machine is legit and doesn't belong to Skit-B. So that's what's going on with that. Big Lebowski, minor update there. The contract manufacturer ARA and Dutch Pinball had yet another meeting just this last Friday. Dutch indicated there was no resolution yet, but they're continuing to talk and they're trying to work something out. Separate from that, but what was revealed the same day is the lead and I believe only software engineer who was working for Dutch Pinball and programming the game has listed on LinkedIn they no longer work for Dutch Pinball and they've started a new job. So some people are wondering if that means there won't be any additional code updates. No idea. I haven't seen any comments. Dutch has not weighed in on that. It's someone else was just looking into it because they wondered why there hasn't been a code update since the initial run started. But others argue that the game is fully programmed, so it's not a big deal.
Now, Bowen, you've got a tutorial coming up on Lebowski, don't you?
You have revealed information that is not public yet, but yes.
Really? Because I found it on a public site. So
it wasn't from. If it was from me, I screwed up.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I found it in a forum.
Okay. There were a number of people who do know this because it was voted on by the Patreon backers. So I said I was traveling to San Francisco in June, and I will be filming the Big Lebowski machine at the Alamo Drafthouse in San Francisco, as voted by the backers. So I'm excited. I have played Lebowski quite a bit, including the new code, and I do feel it is quite complete as far as code goes. There are certain things, of course, that Dutch in its original design was thinking about doing, like having a bowling mode where you just play bowling the whole game instead of playing pinball, which isn't programmed, but I would not expect that. It seems like a bonus thing to throw in at the last minute. I haven't got the Wizard yet, so I can't vouch for its quality or its existence. But it's the detail and the amount of things that are in that game is quite good. And considering it's the very first full game from them, it feels nice, and it's nice to flip, and the rules are great.
I've heard a lot of people talking about that, barring their issues that with their construction, the actual game itself's not bad at all.
I've enjoyed playing it every time I play it, so I stay away from any of these financial
any of the drama
things that are going on. I try not to learn too much about them, lest people ask me what I know, because then I can just say I know nothing, and let's move on.
That's probably an approach we should have taken. I've fallen into a legal morass on tracking. I have to run and follow the legal documentation on Zidware, Skit-B, and I'm hopefully not Dutch. So far, Dutch has been much simpler because there's nothing legal going on right now. It's just negotiation.
So. Oh, I thought you were saying that you just didn't want to read it because it wasn't in English.
Oh, no. No. But I won't teach myself Dutch. I had a hard enough time with Spanish. I ain't going any further in languages. So, okay. So that's it on production. No, we do have one more production thing, a little quickie. Apparently Total Annihilation, which is, as we've mentioned, is going to be produced by Spooky Pinball. That's Scott Dasani, I believe is how his name's pronounced. His Total Annihilation game, which Tony and I played at Texas Pinball Festival, and we both really, really liked it quite a bit. As you see, single level, that Silver Slugger hoop stuff, that I'm just a sucker for single level. But it's getting renamed. It's going to be Total Nuclear Annihilation. I guess that was indicated on the latest Spooky Pinball podcast. And it sounds like Atari has renewed their trademark on Total Annihilation, which is a video game. And so probably to avoid any sort of risk of issue, they just went ahead and renamed it at this time. And it fits with the theme because you're destroying nuclear reactors is sort of the plot. So a little bit of a change there.
I'm fine with that. And I actually kind of hope the Atari thing means that they're making a new Total Annihilation because that game was awesome. They do have, because there's the Total Annihilation, like spin-off game that they kickstarted a couple years ago. But I don't know.
When I first heard about the Pinball Machine, I thought it was going to be based off of the real-time strategy game. I just assumed it. I wasn't a big TA player though, so it wasn't a big deal to me when I found out it was an original theme. Last news item that I have is just IFPA, International Flipper Pinball Association, announced that they're doing something called challenge matches in 2018. Not a lot of info yet. The base outline is that there wouldn't be a fee associated with it. You don't have the 30-day calendar submission requirement. It's not for Whopper points. It's just for rating. But it'll let you challenge another person head-to-head in a best-of-7 game series. So it seems like from what I understand, it's a way that they're trying to get the rating to be used a little more and offer, like, if people like to play dollar games and stuff, maybe converting that into something that's actually submitted. I don't know, given it's not worth whoppers, if there's going to be a high volume of submissions on that or not. Time will tell.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's not something that interests me, so.
Yeah, I could, I don't know. I could care. I could see doing it if just for the fun of it, maybe trying it out. But I don't think, where I'm rated against other players is kind of already determined by the tournaments I play. So I don't think that's going to really sway it very much.
On the Total Annihilation front, Bowen, have you played Total Annihilation?
I have been itching to play Total Annihilation for many months, having seen some video of it and some live streams. And I just never end up in the same place as the game. Hopefully I'll end up in Chicago soon and be able to play it, or just get it produced. It really looks outstanding. And the action of that top area and the inline drops for the locks, it's just clever.
Oh, that locks thing is amazing.
I don't have a sense of how it comes together strategically to know whether there's depth to the rules or you're just trying to do that thing as many times as you can. But that doesn't make it bad. I mean, Barracuda is a great game, but you don't have 17 different things to do. You don't have to have a huge pile of variety for a game to be awesome.
That's because those inlines up at the top require all mental capacity so you can try and light the 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and go into our discussion topics then, because it was a pretty light news week in pinball for once, which is good. And one of the topics I thought is you, of course, are well known for being a participant in competitive pinball. And this is sort of driven by a conversation I had with one of our local area Kansas City players. And that was, what can folks do at the local level to help increase the popularity of competitive pinball? You know, not involving any of the international or national organizations like PAPA, just like, I want to grow the scene. What do we do? And this was sort of driven by last summer. We had someone, he tried to run a selfie tournament and we didn't get any new players involved in it. And we sort of discussed, what went wrong? Could we have advertised it better? Some of the hardcore local players weren't really big fans of the selfie concept. So what was planned to be a 3-month thing only happened 1 month, and then it just sort of petered out. And so, you've been in this for a long time though. So what do you think? What can people like us do if we want to try and get more new people involved into the competitive pinball scene?
So I think one of the stories I would tell about this is how the New England Pinball League has grown. It's been running now for about 5 years, and a couple of things that the league was built on have made it possible to grow to the point where we now have approximately 250 players. And the first big concept is almost all of these concepts are stolen directly from the Pittsburgh Pinball League, which has been running even longer and has about the same size. One of those is that you take the money that someone contributes to a league and you put it towards multiple purposes rather than just putting it as prize money for the top players in the league. I think that the impression that a lot of new players get when they come to pinball is that the elite players, the top players, whoever the best players in the league are, that they're going to take their entry fee and hand it over to those players. And they're reluctant to even join a league because of that. So either having leagues that are free with no prize money at all, or having leagues that are equal contributing leagues. So in our league, we have multiple divisions. We now have A, B, C, and D. When we started, we had A, B, and C. And one of the tenets was that the prize money in A and B and C is identical. So every person will have an eligibility to be in one of those divisions at the end of the season with a chance to play for a prize. And the prize in C and the prize in A, the trophy in C and the trophy in A, they are the same. And I think that gives a flavor to someone who's never played before to know, okay, we care about new players. We care about people who are coming in who are not going to be the best player in the league. And it's grown. It's grown a lot. I don't know if that personally was responsible for that. We also take 1/3 of the money that would be going to prizes and put it into a party fund so that the finale of the league is not just a prize fest to chase the victory, but it also becomes this nice event with free food and I don't know where you would have your league, but drinks. The other thing that worked very well for our league that, again, we stole from Pittsburgh is the ability to run the league at multiple locations. And you may have one location. I don't know how many locations are in Kansas City. I know about the 504 Club, is it?
Your club is 403.
403, sorry.
No, that's all right.
504 is the 504 is from High Speed. It's the car, the police car. Sorry. So one of the things that's happened with our league is we've been able to encourage new locations to open to have more pinball machines because they can become league hosts, and our players choose one location to go to each week. Some people play in Cambridge, some people play in Providence. Because we're in New England, we actually have now 9 locations all over New England that have grown out from the first season we had 3 locations. And that allows you to have this expanding capability to where you don't have a capacity that you might have at 403 to say, all right, we can have a league, but we can only have this many people. You're at that point limiting how big your scene can get. And I think that the Pittsburgh model of having multiple places to play and multiple days of the week to do it gives flexibility. It gives lots of options for people. And lastly, we use free software that's been provided by PAPA and FSPA called the PAPA League Manager. And that will run your league. It gives people standings, it gives people badges, it gives people all sorts of little trinkets to go on so they can see their scores, they can see their progress. And PAPA provides that service completely for free for any league to join.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that. That's
so that the website is league.papa.org, and there's I think maybe 15 leagues around the country that are using it. I'm not sure about internationally, but it's quite useful, and it allows us to run match play leagues and then have all the standings immediately recorded and updated. Even though we have 250 players, we get instant updates. It's great.
Wow. Yeah, our league scene has been we do have multiple locations for pinball, which is good in the area. And the issue is all the leagues though that have happened have always cropped up around a specific location. So there's been a 403 league, and then there's been like a Nubs Pub league that run on different days in case people want to attend both of them. But the times have always been, at least in all the cases for me, I've never actually participated in any of the Kansas City leagues because they all start so late at night that it's just, for me, it's just not practical. Mm-hmm. Whereas the tournaments are on weekends, and these are always on weekdays, and they start like at 8:30 p.m. And it's just with my work schedule, I can't do it. But I like this idea of moving it around about using the different locations, because that's something we actually we have on the Kansas side. We have 3 major locations where
just to be as specific as possible, we don't move it around. We use all the locations. So a player in our league can go to one location on Monday night one week, and then the next week they can go to a different location on Wednesday night and have both of those count as their weeks. We play for 8 weeks, and a player's bottom 2 weeks are dropped. So you only have to actually show up for 6 weeks out of 8 in order to be a full participant and be eligible for the finals.
Oh, so they can go to any of those various locations, and that'll count as their 1 week?
That's right. And so in your case, if you say, well, I've got games at my house, I'll just have my own league night on Tuesday, and people can come to me. And that's how we have, I think, 4 different private homes as locations, and I want to say 5 different public locations, but I could be wrong about that. I don't quite have the number. That's good. I mean, I don't even know how many places our league plays. That's how big it is.
I'd never even thought about using private residences as part of a league night. I mean, my mind was just kind of like a bowling league in my mind. League is this, league is that. But I mean, that makes, and the flexibility of that, I can see where that really would make things a lot easier to run a league, especially a large league, compared to trying to fit, 50, 60, 70 people somewhere.
Right. And that's that even if your league, let's say that you ran a league at 403 and it turns out to be super successful, and you have more people than you can cram, because that's what's going to happen. If your scene is successful and growing, that will happen eventually. What then? You either have to push half those people to a different night, or you have to push them to a different place. And again, I'm not going to say that we did this, because we're completely stealing the concept from the Pittsburgh Pinball League originally.
Well, it sounds like a good setup overall. I mean, it's something that I can definitely see why it would work as well as it seems to work. I mean, it sounds like both have such huge leagues. And I think that's been what's always hurt us in this area is our leagues have been small. And while we might get big tournament player turnouts, we don't get big league player turnouts.
Right. And I think that a new player is much less likely to want to join a tournament as their first inroad, unless it's a tournament that they know that they can get a high value out of. So a lot of qualifying tournaments or 3 strikes tournaments, a brand new player might end up feeling frustrated by that, because they're eliminated fairly quickly. And then they look around and they see, like, this thing's still going to go on for another 6 hours and I'm already out. I guess I suck. Goodbye. Yeah. Pinball's not for me.
That's been my biggest issue with tournaments, is especially when I was first starting.
I think that, and you look at, like, I run Pinburg, or I helped to run Pinburg also. One of the things we wanted to do in Pinburg is to give the lowest players in the tournament the same experience as the highest players in the tournament. So Pinburg basically is a league season run in a weekend, but everybody continues to play. No matter how good or bad you're doing, the tournament goes on, where in a 3 strikes format or even a Papa qualifying format, most of the people who show up for Papa, they play, then a scoreboard tells them they suck, and they go home sad. It's the nature of the beast because of how many people come through. And the only way to get around that is to increase the volume of the number of machines you have available. At location play, you can't do that. You got some cap on how many games as many games as there are at 403. There's only so many. And that tells you how many people you can fit in there. And then you want to do better than that, you have to find other places. Let's see. New England Pinball League. We have 3 locations in New Hampshire, 2 in Massachusetts, 1 in Connecticut, 1 in Rhode Island, 2 in Maine, and 1 in Vermont. So there are now 10 different league locations in New England Pinball League. And it works. It really has worked way better than I thought it would. And the play is friendly. It's very fun. The only problem we have now is that, unfortunately, because of the closure of the fantastic Pinball Wizard Arcade in Pelham, New Hampshire, we no longer have a location that we can bring everybody to play together for finals. We used to just invite everyone. But now we have to figure out how to do finals, and I don't think we've solved that problem completely yet.
Yeah, we shared that closure because it was. I think a lot of people were surprised when they saw that. Probably just because pinball's been growing so much, but I guess there were some extenuating circumstances that were involved there. So
yeah, it's completely a location lease issue, and not anything to do with the success of the location. They were successful.
Okay. Well, yeah, this has a lot of ideas that are new to me in terms of ways to possibly structure leagues. In terms of locations in this area, we've got 3 on the Kansas side that would be seen as quote unquote high quality. One's opening up here very soon on the Missouri side of the border. And there are arguably a couple other locations with sufficient machines that if you want to just do public venues, it's real weird in Kansas City. All the tournaments take place on the Kansas side, but
it makes a weird split on the state level because all the Kansas City, Missouri players all play in Kansas, so they're all in the Kansas state, and then the Missouri tournaments are all dominated by players from like St. Louis and Columbia and stuff.
It's like the Columbia-St. Louis Eastern Corridor controls Missouri,
man.
And so the KCMO folks play on the Kansas side.
They play on the Kansas side on purpose. Oh, geez.
Oh, sure. Well, we welcome them with open arms.
Sure. No, it tells you that some sort of regional decision might have been anyway.
It raises some interesting questions, but beyond the scope of today's discussion. And some of the stuff like on the making everyone, even on the lower tiers, feel welcome. That's something that we've seen some evidentiary based results on the tournament side. We have 2 regular monthly tournaments that happen in the Kansas City area. There's the 403 one that we've talked about. There's also a location at Pizza West. Those tournaments are run almost identical in terms of fee to get in, head to head, double elimination sort of stuff. But the big difference is at Pizza West, that operator takes all the entry fees and he redistributes it so the top half of the field gets at least their money back.
Oh, okay, good.
Whereas 403 does a standard payout to the top 1, 2, and 3. And I did an analysis last year, or at the start of this year, I guess, using the 2016 figures, and found that the average number of people who were not yet having 5 games in on IFPA, so quote unquote new players, that there was a significantly higher count that went to the Pizza West tournaments versus the 403 tournaments. And the only discernible difference I know of is that payout structure. So I thought that does make a difference, where it feels like, because I never win money at 403. I never have. But at Pizza West, I've won my money back. I can get in the top half of the field sometimes.
That, I think, is a real lesson that if you look at who plays pinball, there are a lot more of, I don't want to say of you, but the way you've described yourself, there's a lot more of you than there are of me. And frankly, I'm going to have a great time at any pinball tournament. I don't care what format you use. I'm going to enjoy it. And then maybe I'll complain about it on its format online or something. I don't know. But if I don't give you a good experience, you might not come back. And the hundreds of other yous might not come back. And that is, I think, very critical to growing competitive pinball. You have to provide quality experiences for all players. And double elimination, for example, I would rather see more of what's called a Swiss system, where everybody gets the same number of matches. And then at the end, you just say, okay, we're done. And the best records win the prizes. If you have enough machines, like at 403, for example, to run an entire round at once, then you don't really need to eliminate anyone. And so it is at Pinburg. At Pinburg, we have 300 pinball machines in the tournament, so that we can support 800 players.
And your point's well taken, yeah, there. Though I am a super special snowflake, so I don't, so no one is quite like me. But I think that leads to a good transition here to next pinball topic I wanted to go over, with your point that you would enjoy a tournament no matter what. But what if the pinball machines are not good machines for competition? So I wanted to talk a little bit about what do you guys think makes for a good and a bad pinball machine in the sense of competition, not home ownership or just playing for fun, but actual, what makes a good pin for competition purposes?
Important to me is, first, that the scoring is fair. There isn't some crazy BS that's going to happen. Second, that the scoring is not one-dimensional. So the best example of this is Data East Star Wars. You will never see Data East Star Wars at a major tournament, because the strategy comes down to looping a simple ramp as many times as you can for huge scores. I guess there's a new version of the Star Wars software now that tries to rebalance that and does a much better job of making a fun machine.
Yeah, Chat H code, yeah.
If a game is so one-dimensional that no one would want to play it or watch it, it's not going to make for a very good competitive game. And I think that, for me, there are 2 more categories to make it a great game instead of just one a good game. One is to have multiple dimensions of strategy, where one can try for, say, a medium score or high score by pursuing different goals. So an example of this is World Cup Soccer, where if you need to get a good score, you can go for multi-balls. If you need to get an amazing score, you change your mind and you start going for cities, because getting to the final match is worth a ton, but it's a risk-reward strategy. And last, having games that have non-linear scoring is really important to making things interesting. So an example of this is Creature from the Black Lagoon has these ridiculously high jackpots and super jackpots. That is good, because if you get a player to that point where they're near the jackpot, it ramps up the tension. The player feels it differently because they know that they're near something big and important. And when it does come, it's a big moment for the player, for the viewer, for the commentators, for everybody. Where if you're playing a game that's like Monopoly is a good example of a game that's pretty linear. If you're playing Monopoly, not too much different happens. In multi-ball, the jackpot is $1 million. Now you relight the jackpot, it's $1 million again. And the only big thing that happens in Monopoly is if anybody gets land grab, which is the wizard. But besides that, it's mostly just grinding away at a reasonable amount of points over and over again, and there are no big moments. Most recent great example of this is Metallica with the Crank It Up modes, and that is a spectacularly programmed game because you get those big moments much more regularly than almost any other game I can recall.
Yeah, I find games with a lot of just like chopping wood, where you just where you see the same shot being made over and over and over again. Case in point, at the tournament yesterday, Rob Zombie, really beautiful Rob Zombie score got put up, but it was literally just chopping wood on the same shot, and it was like an incredibly long ball, but it wasn't exciting to watch. And I don't know how much you could really consider it to be fun, because you're just shooting the same shot over and over and over and over again. I think stuff like that is really drags down a game from both a player perspective and a watcher perspective. And with how big pinball's getting on like Twitch and stuff, and how many tournaments we're seeing out there, I think the actual watchability of pinball is something that's becoming a lot more important than it was 4, 5, 10 years ago.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a good point on that one. Yeah, and I hate those. That chopping description, that wood chopping, which Party Zone is a case in point for me. We had a Party Zone on location in tournament for a long time, and oh gosh, it was just painful because it's just those two ramps, alternating those two ramps. I'm really big into, for competitive purposes, things where there's a risk reward and I can take different strategies. So Attack from Mars, for example, is one I really like in competition, even though everyone knows it, because there are multiple options. So I do what I consider a very beginner strategy, and I only attack saucers. That's what I do because it's a risky shot, but I will get rewarded if I'm successful at hitting those. That's what I do, man. It's what I do. I attack the saucers, and you're judging me.
Oh, I was in circuit final in the first round, and I attacked saucers to survive because nothing else was working. Yeah. We, as a 4-player game of top players, we went through 2 balls, and the first place was 250 million.
Oh, wow.
And I was up as player 1, having made no progress at all. And I'm like, okay. And I survived through saucers. I just had to not be last. But you're absolutely right that Attack is a great example of a game with multiple options. And I think that one of the other things it does really well, which I didn't mention before, and you mentioned Twitch and the viewer experience, is that these strategies need to be explainable in a short amount of time to new people who barely know pinball at all, so that they can have a good viewer experience. And some of these big scoring strategies on games are complicated and layered in ways that don't make sense to players or viewers. But others, like Attack from Mars, it does make sense. They're clear, visible progress, and it's this very difficult, delicate balance that the designers and programmers have to go through to make these games that are good for all levels of play and still have interesting decisions to make. I'm not envious, but I'm amazed that they can pull this off on a regular basis with new and interesting rules.
And I was wondering, do you think that the whole Twitch thing will be something that affects more designers as things go on, as it becomes something that is much more actually watchable than just sitting there watching over somebody's shoulder, that they'll lay things out or make adjustments to code in such a way that will make it so it's a bit more accessible to people who are just watching?
I don't think so, because I think that their market of locations and private collectors is not necessarily the same market, and maybe there would be a shift if there was some kind of further incredible growth in the size of the player base for competition. I think that the move towards screen displays above dot matrix displays is a plus in a couple of ways. One that's subtle is that some broadcasters may be able to get the direct feed off of those displays and use them as part of their inlays. Like Carl D'Angelo has done for Hobbit. He has the actual feed off of that mini book thing on his Twitch when he broadcasts. Even the inline displays like the one that Alien has, that means that now someone watching just the top-down camera can still see the scores. They can see the progress. They can see all of that without having to manage the multiple screen effect that pinball already has. And it's good for players too, because they don't have to look up all the time to see what's going on. They can keep their eye much more on the ball than they would otherwise.
Yeah, I found that with a lot of especially the like Full Throttle and stuff that had that actual screen in the playfield and stuff, it made the game feel completely different because I wasn't having to look up. Because I know, like on Jurassic Park, I've missed that shoot the dinosaur, that Velociraptor shot so many times because I just don't see it or don't notice it.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to be able to see that kind of stuff without having to look up as much is really a real plus to me as a player.
Yeah, like for example, one of the videos for Alien shows the tilt warning animation, and it is I haven't played Alien yet, but it looks like the best tilt warning I've ever seen. Like the display that's right in the middle of the game just kind of lights up red, like warning you, like that the ship is about to explode,
yeah.
You get the instant feedback that tells you how many warnings you have left, and it's right there, right in front of you. It's immersive, and that's a thing that I think is necessary to continue bringing in new players. Like I've talked to Mark Steinman, who runs Papa and Replay FX recently about what types of innovations there are, because in the end, the display isn't really an innovation in gameplay. It's an innovation in information. So I wonder if any of these new technologies are going to carry over into innovations in gameplay, something like we saw with Pinball 2000, or some other mechanism that allows the play of the game to change as a result of new technology. And that is what I see that needs to happen for there to be like a new super revolution in pinball growth, perhaps. And competitive play is great, and it's grown the game, and I love it. But it's still the same game we've been playing since 1990, basically, and even before that. There aren't really very many changes in the way you play pinball since Funhouse, for example.
Yeah. So speaking of, we were focusing here on games in particular, and competition, but locations. Bowen, what are your thoughts on what makes for a good, unique pinball location versus what might be just seen as a more pedestrian location or mundane? Because most people aren't going to buy pinball machines; they're going to encounter them out on the wild. But just sort of what triggers that and is like this is a special place for pinball versus just it's a place that has pinball.
Oh, geez, there's so many answers to that. The first thing that came to mind is that it should be tucked into a mountain in Colorado and have games from 1960 to today. But I'm thinking very specifically of Lions Classic, which is one of the greatest arcades I've ever played in.
I was going to ask why a mountain? Is that just to prevent cab fade or what?
I don't know. It just looks good. Like you got to make the trek to get there.
Just ski down, and at the end is hot dogging waiting for you.
That would be nice. That would be very nice. Some mountains don't have pinball machines. I have to go to Park City, Utah, and there's no pinball there. You'd think with all these ski people that they would at least have a wipeout. They definitely don't have that, thankfully, and they don't have hot dogging either.
Mm-hmm. Fools, all fools.
No, I don't know. I think that the really important part of that is the operator, and you think about some of the best locations in the country, like Lions Classic, like 82, like Pinball Wizard, like all of these places are places where an operator has put in the dramatic amount of effort and time to make the thing theirs. And that also means that the game selection at those locations doesn't have to be some specific set that is my dream set. It should be that person's dream set. So the games are free gold watch are not going to be the same games that are at 82 or at Lions or at I'm just trying to think of all of the other great locations that there's so many locations now that I haven't played at, more locations that look great. And it's so much work that person or people put in to make that place theirs, that when you say that most of the people who play pinball are encountering it on locations, those operators are the ones that are really driving the growth of pinball to me. That you think about what the growth is in Portland, and the growth in Portland and the growth in Seattle have come from operators and locations and growing a scene place by place. And it's that. And yeah, I think tournaments are a part of that, and competitive play is a part of that. But the real core of that is those dedicated people who decide to start new locations, or to take a location that has been decrepit and turn it around. I can give you a bunch of examples right here if you want me to go on forever about this.
Oh no, that's a good point in terms of, and that's what we've seen in our area as well. 403's reputation, Pizza West, and the recently opened Nub's Pub, which has the same operator servicing and providing those machines. The location that's going to be opening up here soon in Kansas City. The unifying thing that all of those had going for them is that the operators and owners and their collaborations in terms of the facility and the machines have been such that they're all different. They all feel different. They all offer a different sort of service when you go in, and the machines are well maintained. And that's why, at least for those that regularly play in our area, if those operators are the ones involved, people get very excited. And it's just because they know it's gonna be a quality experience, and you don't expect to go and necessarily, you don't see a lot of the same machines. Occasionally, you will. We might have a Ghostbusters at 2 locations, for example, but by and large, it's by and large, it's just it's that's what we've seen, at least in our area. We're a smaller area, but that seems to be what's working, and we're seeing growth in our area in terms of more locations willing to put them in place. So it's exciting for me because I can't afford to buy all this stuff.
Yeah, and this is also a major shift in the way things were from the 90s, because there were more pinball machines being sold in the 90s than now, but they were being sold to lots of locations and operators that didn't necessarily care about the quality or setup of the games. So there were a lot more Twilight Zones than there are Ghostbusters. But I would say on average, if you encountered a Twilight Zone in the wild in 1995, you were unlikely to play one that felt right, because you were playing one that someone had just set up and they come to collect the coin box every couple of weeks, and that they don't necessarily do the maintenance for most of them. Now, you get these places, and having been to Logan Arcade and C-Bar and Flip Flip and 82 and Free Gold Watch and now like Flat Top Johnny's in Boston, it's all these places where there's so much care by a particular individual or a small set of individuals to make that location theirs, and to give them, whether it's their dream or what, who knows, but those people, they need like lots of massage gift certificates or something, because they're the reason we've got pinball.
Yeah, I've noticed just the difference because I've got a bar and grill nearby that always has a pinball machine in it, and it has no care taken. They had a hook in there for a while that the left flipper didn't work for like a month. It was just dead. And then I came in one day and it was gone and had been replaced by South Park. And the next week I came in and it was doing the ball detect problem issue. And it had that ball detect problem up for about 3 weeks. So, I mean, you can tell when there's a difference between someone who really cares and pours their time into it and with someone else who is just like, whatever.
And I think competitive play in leagues can feed back onto that and turn a location that might not be of very high quality into one that is, by giving them business, but also saying, hey, look, you'll get even more business if this gets fixed and that gets fixed. Like bar leagues that happen on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday nights, you're getting a lot of people into a location that that might otherwise not have very many people coming through it on a day. And if the location then says, hey, we do better when we have working games or new games, then that becomes a thing, and it snowballs.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's hop over to what I've so blandly titled New Pins Roundup, where we were going to go ahead and just talk about some of the machines that are kind of out or are about to come out, but have at least a number of test units, so people have been able to try them out, and just sort of get some of your thoughts, Bowen, on them. Batman 66. Played it?
I have played it, and I'm impressed. It flips really well. The rules are clever. I like the bat phone concept as the way to start modes. I like the variant on the original Batman's multiplier, where you still earn multipliers, but the first one you earn is 2x. Then you earn a 3x if you get a second one. So it presents an entirely new risk reward, where the biggest you can make something is 6x now. But do you want to wait for it? Because you may not even get the chance to put a 6x on something. And the longer you play your turn, the more opportunity there is. I haven't played the updated code with the bat signal multi-ball, so I can't speak to where it is right now. But I had fun playing the one I played at Pinball Wizard Arcade, and I played it earlier than that at Ship Ahoy in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, I haven't played the latest code either. I got to do the prior update. We have a area person who won one as part of one of the pinball charities and invited a bunch of us over. And yeah, it was really cool. I liked it a lot more than the Dark Knight. And I love that risk reward with that Gordon shot before you want to cash in on the phone. I was terrible at it, but I like the idea of it. I think it'll be really special once they get those minor villains coded into the system too. Because I think
the minor villains look great. I mean, I'm like, I want to pick Shame. I just want to pick Shame over and over again.
Bookworm. It's got to be the Bookworm. Aerosmith. I've only played a pro. I've enjoyed it. I definitely get that Kiss layout vibe. But have you got any time in yet on Aerosmith?
Yeah, I've played Aerosmith a little bit at Papa Headquarters and at Flat Top Johnny's and at Quarter World and at 8-Bit Arcade in Seattle.
So once or twice,
a couple times. It's definitely got a similar layout to Kiss, although I feel like the shots are in different places, and some of the shots are a lot harder. Like that center ramp it feels like it ought to be this Kiss ramp, but then it's not. I think that the rules are interesting. There's a little bit of a scoring imbalance, and Batman 66 too has some scoring imbalances that hopefully will get worked out in the long term, and I think they will. But it leads you to doing things in a particular order on Aerosmith, and that was the same. Aerosmith actually to me is most similar to Star Trek in its rules, and its layout is Kiss, but Aerosmith has this crank it up, and you think it's crank it up like Metallica, but no, it's like Away Team on Star Trek, and there are certain modes where the Away Team or the Crank It Up end up being worth a crap load of points. And it presents a very clear path through the initial game if you want to get a decent score going. The toy box effect is really cool. And I like that there's some flying ball stuff going on. That's always fun. It reminds me a little bit of the kicker from NBA. When you shoot the free throw in NBA and it kicks it up into the basket, it's a similar type of kicker, and that's not easy to get right. And it looks like they've got it working very well.
I like that option to cash in or out on that ball, like Mustang style, with the multi ball for the toy box.
Yeah, it's nice, and I think that there are still some variations on the rules. Though when I play a game like that, often what I'm trying to figure out is, okay, well, where is this from and where is that from? And it must be difficult to have complete innovation in a game at this point, because how long have we had these games, and everything's kind of been tried at some point, where you say, okay, this multi-ball rule is carried over from Mustang, and this 2x thing is the same as the Snake, and this Crank It Up, that's just Away Team. But just even to mix those ideas into a working thing is nice. And Aerosmith has a different variety on the supers that you get from completing modes that is unique, where if you complete the mode that's about ramps, you then get super ramps. So there's even variety in those rewards in ways that are consistent with older games, but are new at the same time.
All right. Dialed In. Any experience on it? I played it once at Texas, so I can't really say much on it.
I got to play a number of games on it at Papa headquarters at Papa 20, and I really enjoyed it. It flips very comfortably. It's fast. It's way faster than Hobbit. And the rules and mode design, I don't have quite the flavor for yet. And but what I found was that the modes were worth a lot of points, and the feedback that the modes give you is very good, because you have that second screen that acts like a cell phone, and it basically FaceTimes you in the middle of making mode shots. So you'll make a mode shot and be like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And on the one hand, it's great feedback. And on the other hand, it can be interfering feedback too, because it doesn't tell you what to do next. It just tells you, hey, you did something. Hey. I don't know how to get that right. And they do get it right. Like, as soon as that person shuts up, the display, the little mini display changes to tell you what thing you're supposed to do next in the mode. And the big display is also telling it to you at the bottom, which means you don't have to look up as much as you would otherwise. These are things that, like these new displays, like we've been doing dot matrix for so long, that these new displays present a lot of issues with what information you convey, how you convey it, and how difficult it is even to create something that looks good. It's much harder to make an LCD look good than it is to make dot matrix look good, I think. Or that's my impression. Maybe it's just that they had longer to do it. So you get games like Hobbit or Wizard, where a new player is going to be really intimidated by that display. There's so much information being conveyed that I don't think there's very much you can get from it. Where on Dialed In, I think it's been distilled a little better. And that may just be a manufacturer growing up or figuring out, like, okay, this is what we did the first time, how can we do it better? And just iterating and improving.
I think, and that's one thing I think is a lot of the LCDs, and I especially noticed it on Dialed In, but I've noticed it on Hobbit as well, and this and that, is they seem to do a lot for watchers, not players, with letting them keep up with everything. But I know every time at Texas that I went past Dialed In, and the selfie mode was active, there were people laughing and joking and having fun with it. And just the way that lets them play with people who aren't actually currently in the game, I think is a really good addition to pinball all in all.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the new games coming out, the only other main one I wanted to hit on was find out if you'd had a chance to play Alien Pinball. I got one game in at Texas Pinball Festival, and that's it. So I can't say a whole lot. I thought it was pretty clever. Especially, I'm trying to compare it to Full Throttle, which we did have on location for a while, and it didn't do very well. So they got it out of there pretty quick. So
no, it's too bad. I played Full Throttle many times on location. I love that game.
They were having mechanical issues with it. I think the main thing.
I haven't gotten to play Alien yet. I've seen some of the videos, and I've read feedback from other players who have played it, and I really like the layout. Feels pretty unique. The variety of shots, like that, those upper flipper shots are cool, and the magnet grabber looks neat. They've got that second display, and they're doing interesting things with it. It's I'm very eager to play.
Yeah, it has a good look. In terms of other things, I mean, I don't know if there are any, Bowen, that you want to hit on. Spooky's Jetsons, Multimorphix P3 systems finally in production. So, I mean, there's Lexi Lightspeed or any of the other sort of mini game setups that they've got going on with that, or Dominoes. I didn't know there are any there that you've played around with and thought, oh, there's a lot to work with here.
I haven't played Dominoes or Jetsons. I think that they're definitely clearly making simple concept games at that point for casual play, where like in Jetsons, it's clear what you're doing, and anybody who walks up to the game and never played before, they can see the spell outs. There's sort of a double-edged sword to that if your game is nothing but spell outs, people who are interested in playing and getting better, they give up on it pretty quickly. And like you were saying, they had like, I guess South Park kind of fits into that category, but Lebowski, by comparison, also has spell outs, but then the things that are behind those spell outs and the other modes that are available make it a more fleshed out game.
I did get a game in on Jetsons. It was harder actually to control than I had expected, given the simplistic look to it. But yeah, it very much reminded me of some of those Pinball FX2 tables that they do on the video game side. Some of those are very prone to doing spell out setups when they do multi-packs, it seems. So that's what it reminded me of. But now I know Tony had some questions about back on the topic of pinball tutorials for you.
I did. I was just mainly, I know you got such access at Papa to pretty much everything, but I was wondering if there's a game that you haven't done a tutorial yet that you kind of look forward to getting a chance to.
At Papa headquarters, we do have a lot of access to games, so I think if there were a game that I would really be excited to tutorial on, we'd have done it by now. We've been trying to do a tutorial on, there's a couple tutorials that haven't worked for mechanical reasons. Like, people keep asking us for a tutorial on Wizard of Oz, and we've tried. We've tried to do it twice. So I want to get that done, but it hasn't happened.
Machine
yet.
Issues or camera issues or
it's
just
been
bad
mechanical issues.
And then my other question was less of a question, more of a thought of experiment that I'm going to open with apologies to both yourself and Charlie Daniels. But say the Devil's decided you haven't done a tutorial on his favorite game, so he forces you to choose one of his 4 favorite games to do a tutorial on. Which do you do? With the choice being Super Mario Brothers, Viper Night Driving, Bugs Bunny's Birthday Ball, and Magic Girl.
Well, I suspect that if I did Magic Girl, I could at least be done pretty quick.
Oh, wow.
So I would probably pick that. Viper Night Driving has a lot of interesting ideas in its rules. It just kind of gets hamstrung by that ball. The ball just isn't the right kind of ball for pinball, and it doesn't feel right to play. But it's not actually a bad game. You mean the big one or the little one?
The big one. Yeah, we had one on location for a while, and I hated. Everything you did felt wrong. It didn't feel right at all.
Yeah, and that was their decision to go with the glow balls. Is what happened there. That having those different balls meant it. Well, you know from having played it, it just doesn't work. But if you had the same play fields with a regular pinball, it might have worked gangbusters. And the play field isn't that different than some of the other successful play fields, like GoldenEye, for example, has the same overall structure of wide sweeping ramps and modes, and it's a great game. But that game is just a disaster.
No, I agree. That game was definitely the low light of tournament while it was on play.
Yeah, it was interesting. But okay, so Magic Girl for speed. Yeah, that
now,
makes a lot of sense.
Which Super Mario did you mean?
We had a blue. Yeah, we had a blue cab.
Forget that. If it's the Redemption game, I'm all in. I want that. That game's great. That game is terrific.
I played the Redemption at Texas Pinball last year and actually thought, that's actually all right. But I guess that one be the big one's almost as fast as Magic Girl, because I guess it's just left ramp all day. But
yeah, well, there are even some games that we do tutorials on where the strategy you would want to use in competitive play is very clear and simple and straightforward, but you can't do that when you're doing the video because it's boring. I was like, I'm just going to sit here and shoot this ramp all day, and then who would watch that? So we mix it up. We have to play the whole game and try to show the strategy or show the different things, even the ones that are clearly ineffective for playing for score. And I think that's one of the things that is. We get feedback sometimes on the tutorials about the ways we explain things that some players don't quite catch on to, that we need to explain it from the perspective of someone who just hasn't played this game at all or wants to learn about the full variety of what's available, even the things that aren't as effective.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I would quit watching if you only shot one ramp all day. So I'm glad you don't. Those are it for the pinball topics. I did have a little segment I wanted to do because I know, Bowen, that you kind of like math. You're kind of into mathematics. So I've had a little math section. The first thing is I know you're really familiar because of some consulting you've done with mathematics in terms of their involvement in game shows. I was just wondering if maybe you could do a summary for the listeners in terms of the importance of actually using mathematics and coming up with certain probabilities in order to actually make game shows both be successful from a viewership standpoint and successful from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, it's much more from the perspective of the show creators than it is from the perspective of the player even. So, for example, in Deal or No Deal, they might say, look, we want to be able to give away this much money per episode. And then you have to then construct, okay, what should these suitcases say? What should the deal offers be like? All these things need to be prescriptively laid out. What my job often comes down to is making estimates for the show about how challenging a game might be to win, and then how much money it ought to be worth in order to satisfy both the viewers who want someone to be able to win a large amount of money every time, and for the network who wants nobody to ever win a large amount of money ever. And that balance is pretty difficult to strike. So the feedback I often give includes some measure of uncertainty to say, I think that you're going to give away this much money, but if things go bad or things go good, it could be this or that. And I've worked on, I think now maybe a dozen shows, maybe about half of which have made it to TV. The worst show I ever worked on was extreme musical chairs show called Oh Sit.
I don't like the name, but go on.
And you might think, why would a musical chairs show need a mathematical advisor? But they need to give away money on this show. So I have to tell them how much money everyone earns by sitting in chairs. So when you finish the round, everybody has to go to the chairs, and the chairs are worth money. And whoever, not only the person who doesn't find a chair, they're out, but the person who has the least money, they're also out. And building that and simulating it turned out to be a pretty involved process where I would tell the show, okay, you're going to need to tell me how fast people run. And then they went and did it. They like brought in people to run all of their test obstacles because it was a mix between musical chairs and Wipeout, which is a much more popular show.
Mm-hmm.
People just fall on stuff. So imagine Wipeout plus musical chairs. That's what this show was.
I'm still not really picturing it working. I'm sorry.
It doesn't work, and I have no idea why. I have no idea why it was renewed for a second season, but it was.
Oh, this one went to air?
This one went to air for 2 years, 20 episodes.
How does that happen?
Oh, Sit. Hosted by Jamie Kennedy. I can't believe it even made it to one episode with that. The real answer is that it was on the CW, so it was fine.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes it all, then it's all clear now to me.
So all of this is being described to me in text pretty much, because it's not like I can see this show. It doesn't exist yet. And then when I actually watched the show, my perception of what the show was going to be like was totally different than what I thought it would be. And people are running around and climbing over these ice and water obstacles, and then the chairs themselves are in the center of an arena that they all have to take bridges to get to when the music stops. They're pushing each other off the bridges and falling in because the bridges are obstacles themselves. It was crazy. And the mathematical problem I needed to solve was twofold. One was setting the money up so that the show would give away a certain amount of money but look like they were ready to give away more, and also to answer to them the equity question of the chances of men versus women being in the final round as well as winning the show. Because if you've seen Wipeout, often there aren't very many women winning that show, either just because of the natures of the types of obstacles they're using, I suppose. And so my job was to figure out what are the chances of a woman winning the show or of a woman making the final three. And the numbers I came up with turned out to be exactly right, which was surprising.
Impressive.
Yeah, I would say, how do you even mathematically figure for something like that, given the differences between people? Do you just use like averages for people, how people work, what's the word I'm looking for? How they handle situations, or how well they do, or?
They ran their test contestants through the obstacles, men and women, and they gave me the distributions of how fast people ran. And I then used that as a basis for building a full distribution of what it would mean to pull men and women out of a bucket, basically, and say, all right, the show is 6 men and 6 women, so reach into the bucket of men and bucket of women and pull out 6 men, 6 women. That's our show. Now run the show. And each of those men and women would then run as fast as it says they're going to run, and then sit in random chairs. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a completely accurate statistically, but it was the best I could do on a small amount of time.
Okay. It's interesting. That's really interesting.
A more recent show I worked on was on MTV, a dating show called Are You the One, which is also surprising that a dating show would need a mathematical advisor. But this dating show is basically $1 Million Mastermind, because the show has set up secret pairings of men and women in advance of the show. And the contestants have to figure out the correct pairings. And if they can figure out all the correct pairings, they win. But the show only gives them the feedback of how many pairings they have right on a regular basis.
So how often when somebody comes to you looking for your help and they give you a proposal for a game, do you just sit there and look at it and like, what were you on when you came up with this idea?
Usually not, because by the time it gets to me, it's already gone through multiple levels of thought. So it's very rare that someone will say, I need a math advisor for this. And they've already gone through probably a network and a producer and a production company. So there are still some very bad ideas that come to me that I'm like, this is not going to succeed on TV, I don't think. But I'm often quite wrong about that on both sides, where the show that I worked on that I thought would be the most successful never even made it to TV. And some shows that I didn't think were going to be very successful did. I worked on a show last year, 2 years ago, that I said, oh, this will be really good if it ever gets to TV. And that show is on now, and it's called The Wall. And it has been quite successful. That's on NBC.
Oh yeah, I've seen the commercials for that one with that's like a pachinko looking thing.
Yeah, $1 Million Plinko.
That's Chris, what's his name's show, isn't it? He's on it.
Yeah, Chris Hardwick is the host, and LeBron James is one of the executive producers, and they have a really well crafted game, so it keeps the viewer interested. There's always stakes, like even throughout the entire episode, there's always something at risk or something more to play for. Sometimes on game shows, you get to sort of these boring phases where you kind of know what's going to happen, and it's a foregone conclusion almost. And The Wall it never happens that way.
I have all right. Since you're okay, so you've been looked at distributions and such to help determine the goals that these show creators often have with shows. So I'm going to pivot this a little bit on pinball, because I need your help on this. We know that geometry on pinball machines is obviously a major component of how well they play. It is my belief, and I'm right, that wide body pinball machines are totally inferior to the standard body geometry. But I need a proof so that I don't have to argue this anymore. Can you give me this proof?
No. There is no such proof.
Because you're wrong.
I'm not wrong, but I was afraid that it was just too hard.
Well, I mean, there are some great wide bodies and there's some terrible wide bodies.
You were half right.
Would you say, for example, Twilight Zone would be better with 3 inches narrower?
Sure.
Okay, where?
Gotta get rid of that horrid pop bumper section and that huge outlane, problem, dead end zone spot. That's the big issue, I think, for most of them is they've got this space down below and they don't know what to do with it. So you either stick in a whole bunch more in lanes or you put in some massive horrid outlane. And I think that's what kills it. But that's just, I just wanted the proof. I just wanted to be factually right. I guess I don't get to be.
Star Trek Next Generation? Demo Man?
Slings are too high.
Demo Man. Amazing game. Almost as good as Judge Dredd.
Demo Man, I think, is better than Judge Dredd, but and is a decent wide body, but still, it would have been better as a standard. Okay.
Popeye? Come on, man.
Oh, Popeye. Don't. I get so much hate on my Popeye dislike. My big thing with Popeye isn't its width. It's that I feel like 20% of the time I don't see the ball.
I don't know how you managed to see the ball 80% of the time on that game, but congratulations.
Because I just trap up and look at it and think, oh, that's what it looks like. I forgot. All right, I got a different one for you. Then this one is one that was applied on I'm staff on a video game site called True Achievements, and this predates me being on staff. And I work on genre assignments. I don't work on the math on this, but full disclosure, I was opposed to this change when it happened. So, and I'm dredging up ancient history, but the way this site works in a nutshell is it exists to take Xbox achievements, which are things that they unlock when you accomplish things in video games. And they wanted to create a system so that they could determine how difficult the achievements are. And the way they do that is a proxy with rarity. So the old system was very straightforward, and this is still how they do the base games. They take the square root of the gamers who own the game, and they divide by the gamers that have unlocked that particular achievement. And that's what gives them their score for how rare it is. So,
and then you square root that. You're not saying square root. Okay, because the other thing would be wrong. Units.
Yeah, it would be wrong.
Right.
No, this, and this is how they used to handle downloadable content. And the way they determine if you own is if you have one achievement in the game, then they say, okay, you own it.
Oh, because they wouldn't see it. They're only seeing your records of your achievements and not your.
The game won't show up on your profile unless you unlock an achievement. So it's what they feel. It's the best they feel they could do. And I don't have an issue with that. That's how they used to handle the downloadable content, which are for sale packs for video games that developers tend to do after the fact. And it's become more prevalent nowadays. So the way it used to work on that is same approach, except they only determined if you owned the DLC, if you had a DLC achievement unlocked already. And then if you did, that's the population. However, there were people who complained because some DLC packs have very few achievements and they can be all very difficult to unlock. So there was a lot of concern that there were a lot of people who owned these packs, but they weren't getting tracked because they couldn't unlock any of them. It was too hard. So to solve the problem, the site switched systems just for the DLC. And the way they decided to do it is they now use the geometric mean of the population to prove if to determine what the count is of the DLC ownership. So they take the population of the main game, the population that they know because they have at least one achievement, have the DLC, and then do the geometric mean of those two figures and say, that's how many people we've decided own the DLC.
So it's the geometric mean of the number of overall people who have the game and the number of people who have DLC achievements?
Have at least one DLC achievement, correct.
Yeah, that's a total fart. That's not right.
Okay. I wasn't really familiar with geometric means. I'd never used them.
Well, because let's say, for example, that you have an achievement in a DLC that's a cakewalk, like shoot a guy with the new gun, boom, 10 points, and 90 to 95% of the people who own that DLC have that achievement. Now you look at your number. Your geometric mean will be way above 100% of the people who have that game. It's just completely wrong. Like, for example, say 1 million people own the game and 100 people own a DLC, but then 99 of them get all 100 of them get an achievement because they really care about it. Now your geometric mean will claim that 10,000 people own that DLC, and that it's a rarity of 1%, because that's the geometric mean of 100 and 1 million. That is ridiculous. The right way to do this would be to sample individuals from the ownership of the game, and to ask them whether they own the DLC. And in some cases, you wouldn't need to ask them because the people you sampled would have DLC achievements, and you would already know the answer. But you would need to then ask the other people that were sampled, do you have this DLC? And most of them will just say no, and some of them will say yes. And then that's it. Then you've got your estimate.
Okay. I was a part of a 5-person task force that got put together to try and hammer out a quote unquote solution to this. I pulled the specific examples where I had the DLC totally falling apart because I had easy to unlock things and it was huge scores. And they put it to a site vote, and no one understood what was going on, and they just knew that the new system would give them higher points. So that's what passed. So
yay, points!
Yep, that's what it ended up being. I don't even think I got 20% opposing it in the end because they just inflated the scores on the site so much. But I was pretty sure it was mathematically wrong. I needed an expert to confirm it. So Bowen, I thank you for confirming it for me. You haven't confirmed my wide body dreams, but at least my video game nightmares have been confirmed to be real. I only had one last math question for you. I think this one's pretty straightforward, but I mostly do administrative work at this point, but I actually started my career as policy analyst, and I still do policy analysis for government. And I put together reports. Of course, what do people want? They usually want the mean. They always ask about the mean. Sometimes I'll have things where people want to talk about medians, and that comes into a lot of play for things like dues payment analysis and stuff for me, because it's so different from what the average is. But, when people are getting their stats 101 lesson, they're told the 3 big M's: mode, median, mean. Can you explain to me why I should ever care about mode? I have never had anyone ask me for mode ever.
Nope.
Okay. Good. I won't bring it up.
I will direct you to something I wrote either on Twitter or Facebook recently. No, it was on Twitter. This was just earlier, about 3 weeks ago. So, can we stop talking in math about mode? Mode stinks. Nobody uses mode. I wish it were not a thing.
Wow, that was pretty blunt. But what about figuring out the most common girl's baby name of 2016?
Because that is not a numerical data set. That is a categorical data set. In categorical data, you have Family Feud mode. You have categories of things, and then you look for the number one answer. Because you can't. What is the mean name of babies? It doesn't make any sense to ask that question.
It's Jenna
Nor
Hanna.
does it make sense to ask for the median baby name of 2016.
Okay, that's okay.
So
that was the only instance I could imagine someone would argue would be something like that. But yeah,
and then my follow up is that right now, my job, I write math curriculum, and we are writing curriculum that meets the Common Core State Standards, which is the standards that most states in the country have decided to adopt. They're very good standards. They're high quality. They make it clear what to do every year. They do not mention the word mode once in the entire standards for K-12.
All right. Well, I guess that's definitive then.
And they mention mean and median quite a few times.
Well, those are very useful.
Those are very useful. Those are great. Mode is disastrous. And what happens is students then, when they're introduced to these things, mean, median, and mode, they mix them up. And then the next year, they don't know which is which, and you have to teach them all over again. And it still doesn't work because, I don't know, it sucks. Mean and median have value, very big value, and mode has no value. What's the mode income in the United States?
Who cares?
Right. The answer is the answer is zero.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about trying to solve for it. Oh, yeah, that's right, because of kids, yeah.
But even if you only include adults, the mode is still 0.
Oh, really? I guess that would make sense, because you'd have somewhere on the order of 4.7 to 6.5% of the population, depending on state, that is unemployed.
Yep. And so what value does that give us for overall information? Not very much at all. That's why you put people into categories of ranges of income and not specific numbers. And you can say which is the most common category. That makes a lot of sense. And at that point, that is a little bit like mode, but it's not mode. Mode is stupid.
All right. Excellent. Good. I won't ever have to bring it up again. Well, we're at the end of the show. So, Bowen, I want to thank you very much for coming on. We really do appreciate it and lending your expertise, both in pinball and mathematics.
Sure, man. I want to know what the mode length of your show is.
Probably not anything, because I don't think we've ever had any land exactly the same. I once got within 4 seconds, I think, but
that means they're all the mode.
Oh, okay. They are all. All are one and one is none. Anyway, for those that want to contact me about anything other than the mode, you can email the show, eclecticgamerspodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us on social media. Facebook would be facebook.com/eclecticgamerspodcast.
We're available on Twitter and Instagram as eclectic_gamers.
And Bowen's contact stuff in terms of the Patreon is in the show notes. The Papa YouTube page is in the show notes. The Tilt Through Pinball podcast, which is the best competitive pinball podcast, in my opinion, that's on the air, is in the show notes. So go ahead and check those out. They're really good pieces of content. And until next time, I'm Dennis.
I'm Tony.
And goodbye, everyone.